Let's see if it's a good morning or good evening. Guess it's good evening. Uh, Jim Howard, whoops. Jim Howard here, of course, in Fort Worth, Texas. Um, I really intended just a while ago to, I'm running two cameras. Um, and this camera, of course, I have my two monitors are right here, and this camera is on top of one of the monitors, and the other camera is right over here, and I just took this one, the second camera up, although in the past I've used two cameras and whatever, but before I started this video, I just hooked this one back up for a second, for my second, but I was thinking, I think I'm just going to do away with this camera because I get kind of confused when I'm sitting here and, going to the next, camera or whatever, or when I'm holding something up, I'll hold something up that I'm talking about, and I won't know, which camera is it, which camera is it. So that was my intention just a few minutes ago, that I was going to do away with this camera because of confusion on my part about, I'd go like, which camera is this, but after, firing it up and then looking like, hey, this is a good, it's good view, and okay, this is a good one too, I'm going to keep the camera, both of them. Maybe what I'll do is just okay, I'm just going to keep it. I have let's see, it is already, I think, is this oops. Okay, this is Sunday, and tomorrow is the 31st of July, and then on the next day I have a doctor's appointment to go to, and I do need to get in and see the doctor. I've got several things going on. So this time I'm going to actually make a note of things to, tell the doctor. In fact, I think I've made some videos in the past, saying, I go in with one problem, even though there may be more than one I go in with, because in order to get it taken care of. But this time I think I'm actually going to go in with a list of some things that I need to tell the doctor and have the doctor check on. Also, not that it really matters to you, but I think I've mentioned it repeatedly when talking about, being picked up by the service that Fort Worth has, excellent service. I think I mentioned repeatedly because in my mind it was that there was a $2, pickup fee. So when the bus, would come to pick me up, like it did the other day, to go have lab work done at the doctor's office, I thought that I was paying like $2 for pickup, and then here, and then when time to be picked up, well, you have to tell them ahead of time. So for a doctor's office visit, that's kind of, or something like that, it's kind of difficult because you don't know, how long you're going to be in the doctor's office. But anyway, I was mentioning to Darlene, that I forget how it came up. Okay, well, I said, that's not too bad, you know, $2 being taken someplace and then $2, you know, when they pick you up. And she said, what? You know, because she's used the service for years and years and years. And and I, when my son was in the hospital for a few months, grown son, I had to go with her to do the grocery shopping, and wow. But it wouldn't be that way now because the price of food's gone up so much. But when I was going with her during that time, she would have at least 3 carts. Of course, she's in a wheelchair. And so when my son was doing it, you know, helping her with the groceries, he had to do it. But for several months I had to do it. And it was at least 3 carts full. And sometimes it was 4 carts that I had to push through, you know, through the store. But all this time, I was thinking that it was a $2 fee. It's a $4 fee. So on the first, when I go to the doctor's office, I'll pay $4. And then when I'm, you know, picked up, I'll pay $4 to be brought home. And something I didn't know, because of, you know, that Darlene had pointed out to me. She said, you know, was that enough time? This is only my 2nd time of just me going. I just got approved recently, you know. Doctor has to fill out a form. And it's how far can you walk? Or, you know, of course, some people are in wheelchairs. You know, how far can you walk? Can you wait outside for X amount of time, and stuff like that. The doctor has to actually put in that kind of information. I thought really that it would just be the doctor. This person needs to be, you know, but they have to put more information in than that. But what Darlene was telling me, Darlene's my ex-wife. We've been divorced for about 40 years. She said, oh, they know that doctors, you know, you can be delayed at the doctor's office. So something like that, they go ahead and, you know, if you're not available, you can then, you know, call them and tell them, you know, that your doctor, you know, and they'll just go ahead and come. Of course, you still pay, you know, you pay $4 to, so anyway, so that's all straightened out. I was thinking it was $2 for quite a while, because I guess I don't listen. No, she doesn't listen to me at all. That's why we're divorced, I guess. But I guess I don't listen to her. Well, she definitely does not listen to me. She doesn't think my opinion is, you know, and she tries to, like, everything has to be micromanaged, you know. And I'm a more orderly, organized person. And then, too, if a problem comes up, she's like, oh, my God, what are you going to do? That, you know, whatever. You know, no, it's a problem. You know, you solve the problem. But why did I get on this? Oh, anyway. So it's, oh, yeah, I was thinking of, that's, I guess, why she thought, I was telling her a while back that I was going to get a bunch of $2 bills. And why? And I said, well, that'd just be, you know, just for the, you know, medical service, give them a $2 bill, you know. And I'm not sure she even knows that $2 bills exist. But I was thinking, you know, but now that it's $4, you know, well, now I'm, you know, going to have ones available or something. But anyway, the doctor's office that I'm going to, which I've been going to for years and years and years, not as long as, well, she goes to a different doctor. And, but they they remodeled a while back. I think after COVID, maybe it was before, they remodeled their place and the doctor's office. And there isn't any restroom out in the lobby. You know, before there were, you know, male and female restroom out in the lobby. Now, if you want to use a restroom, you have to tell the person at the window, you know, I need to use the restroom, so they can press the button to let you go back and try to find it. And for somebody who has, you know, bladder problems and frequent urination and everything else connected with that, it's kind of a problem. I'm not sure if why they would not have, unless they didn't want people coming off the street, which in that area there's not a lot of people walking down in front of, you know, this area. Right up the street a few blocks is, about 4 or 5 blocks, is a, you know, Walmart. Too bad their office isn't next to a Walmart area. Then you, so I moved, let's see, I just now moved the umbrella light has been over here in that corner, you know, and yeah, it's pointed at the ceiling. And I've moved it several times. Now it's been moved over, you know, it's over here. Oh, I guess I can do this, right? You know, they have a, of course I have two good cameras. Oops. There's a shield on it to come down to block it. I don't know how much it is. The video looks okay that I've seen. There is a camera that you can remote control. So like in that case, I would be able to remote control the camera and have it turn all, you know, and zoom in, do all that kind of stuff, remote control on it. And I wonder if I could pull that up now on go to Amazon. I'll put okay. I'm sure it'll be on this list here. I bet it's going to be fairly expensive. Let's see. Okay. Guess it is. I was trying to think of what. Okay, I think this is it. Is this it? That's not too. Well, it's down in price too. I can't afford it, but Zoom certified Nexco N970P 4K auto framing, adjustable. I'm not sure, but no, it does. It has a shows the remote control. Let's see here. Is that my Coke? No, here's my Coke. Auto framing, adjustable field of view. Okay, let's see. Okay, I don't see it. I don't see it going, you know, like all the way and then up and down or what, you know, but I'm sure it does a little bit. Okay, here's one. Here's one for $250. Because I've seen one that does the tracking. Let's see here. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to check those. But I wouldn't mind having, but 250 is quite a bit of money since I have two excellent, you know, cameras. They're not, you know, I can't control them remotely, but I wonder, let's do this. And go to YouTube. And this guy here, by the way, is in London, and it's a mall that has a piano there, you know, out there in the area. But that mall, I guess, also is like connected to the rail station or something, rather, for traffic across town, I guess. And so it's an interesting, but he really goes to town. You know, he goes to town and he gets people, and people will come up to him and say, "Would you play such and such?" And there's people that come up and, you know, they'll say, "Can you play the Ave Maria or something?" And he says, "Yeah, you know." And then it'll be like I saw a young lady, and she, I guess, was a student at in music or something like that, and then she starts singing the Ave Maria and things like that. So he has an interesting I really like this guy's commentary here. Anyway, what was I looking for? Oh, yeah, I wanted to enter this and see if we can pull up a review. Uncompressed 4K, let's see here.
Hey, what's up guys, Steven here, welcome back to another video, and today we're taking a closer look at the craziest webcam of 2022, the Nexigo Iris, which claims to have the largest sensor on a webcam ever. Well guys,
So let's see here. Somebody comments the only useful 4K is to crop it when it's zooming to follow you. The image quality while you're sitting down looks like that of a 720p. Yes, yeah, of course it. Honestly disappointing considering the large sensor. Anyway, I guess I'll check, you know. What do I really need, you know? Do I really need to, like, point at the umbrella or something? It's not like I walk around the room and want it following me or something. But, man, I've had cameras before. I've had, let's talk about computer cameras or whatever, since before most of you were born. And the first computer cameras, of course, were not in color, and the resolution wasn't that good. There was no such thing as a USB port. It plugged into an RS-232 port on your computer. So anyway, looks like this will be about a 30-minute video. I really liked in the past making walking and talking videos, and you liked them too, and I really enjoyed, well, I still can enjoy that. Going to a video where somebody's, you know, out driving or walking or talking and that kind of stuff. Now I have trouble walking very far, and I really need to be concentrating on, like, it's now kind of dangerous for me to like look up at the moon or something like that. I need to be paying attention to my walking or I'll fall down and have trouble getting back up. Back several years ago, before I was I'm in worse shape now, but I went down to mail a package across the street. So I walked half a block, walked over across the street to put a package in the mailbox, and then started back, and I wasn't paying attention, and the curb was a lot higher right there. There was a turn-in for cars to go into that little shopping center there, and the curb was extra high up or something, or maybe the road was extra low down or something, and so I stepped off and boom, I was laying in the roadway, a busy street, and I looked down, and there was a red light down there, so cars were stopped, you know, at the, but I had trouble getting back up, and I kept looking down the street, you know, because this being Texas, somebody probably would have thought, I don't know why this guy's trying to crawl across the street, but I'm just going to hit him, you know, see how far I can knock him. But anyway, I ripped my pants up and, you know, scratched my leg up, but I got across the street and made it home. Now I'm in much worse shape. And plus two now, I mentioned this before, but I could hold them up to you. The shoes that I've been, and when I say shoes, and my feet are so swollen, although they're less swollen now because I've lost quite a bit of weight. But they're made for people that have, it's not a flat foot, some type of problem with their feet. There's a name for it, and I can't think of what it is. And so these, you know, my feet, but they're like clown shoes. And so they're too long, and because nothing else would, you know, fit. And so So I think I like this light better there than where it was. I don't know. You may not notice any difference, but I think I do. But maybe it's just in my 82-year-old brain. Back here, this is the thing that's plugged in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's for my pacemaker, and it's checking all the time. And if something irregular, would happen, it would automatically dial in. And well, of course, it's over the internet. It's not a 300 baud modem or something, but it would dial in and upload the data to the, I wouldn't have to do it, although I could push a button and do it. But it monitors 24 hours a day, and it goes, and then if next to it, I've hardly ever used this. I was sent it a long time ago to review. Very few items that I saved. I was sent hundreds of items to review for Amazon, and I did hundreds of reviews on Amazon, and eventually they kicked me off. And and almost all those items, the very few did I keep for myself. I gave them all away to the office. I'd take something down I thought they could use, and to people around here. I gave a ton. I gave that stuff mostly away. I kept a few those tactical lights. I kept a few of those for myself, but I ended up giving them. Well, I don't even know where my last one that I kept is. I think my son might have taken it into his room, and I wish he would tell me, because I'll be looking around for it, and then I look, maybe it's in his room, But so actually, I don't think I have one now, unless it's laying around here someplace buried, and because I've given him a tactical light too. I spent a lot of money on those over the years. I mean, started out with a long one that did the D batteries, and that was, maybe that's why I've got the problems I've got. Because after, months of carrying the thing around, maybe it wasn't months, maybe it was weeks. It was like, oh my God. And then I went to a long that took C cells, and that was a lot better for dual use. One, the flashlight part, and the other part is I never had to hit anybody with one. But there was once when I thought for sure that I was going to use it full force on this guy. Him and another guy, they were at a part. That's when we had the patrol service. My, at that time, wife and I set up a patrol service where I was the only one patrolling. Well, I had a guy help for a little bit, and so I was doing seven nights a week patrolling before I hired this guy in. And I also was going out during the daytime and signing up, businesses. And it was pretty easy to sign them up. But because I ran little display ads in the local weekly paper for the area, and never once did anybody ever call for it. I had to go in and sign people up, and I did it. But anyway, I had this apartment complex, and I didn't patrol it during. Well, I mean, if I went out someplace, I would drive through it too, but it was for at night, really, when they were closed and that kind of stuff. But I'd signed them up. Ruskin Heights Apartments. They were the ones hit by years ago. Someplace you'd find a video on here, but probably not indexed good enough that you could find it when a helicopter, when a tornado hit that area. and did massive damage. A long time ago, before any of you were born. When that happened, I was I think I was in grade school, I think. I might have been in high school, I'm not sure, can't remember now. But anyway, it was during the daytime, they called our number and said that they had a belligerent person at the swimming pool. The swimming pool there, they had the swimming pool and the apartments, not all of them, but they had apartments that were all the way around this. So people in their apartment could easily look right down and see the pool down there. And so I started heading over there. And of course it was daytime, but I had my flashlight, of course, and my gun. I was in uniform. I put my uniform on, went over, and there were two drunk guys at the pool, and there was nobody else there. And when it happened, there was a lot of people at the pool, and the apartment complex had hired this one guy to be the maintenance guy. And he was there with his buddy, and as part of the maintenance, or that's his job. He got, I don't know if he got 100%, so I'm sure he got so much an hour. And also, I think some of these, I know some of these apartments, because even I've seen in the past ads for a few places, where security officer wanted apartment furnished, and I'm not sure, apartment supplied free, or maybe it was like half price or something in addition to your wages. But I think it's quite often for maintenance people to have that. Anyway, that's what this guy had, and like I said, I don't know what the deal was, but he wasn't on duty, I don't think, and they just hired him in. And they didn't do a complete, I guess they didn't do I think they did the background check, but I don't think they'd got it yet, and they hired him. And so him and his buddy were drunker than $700, and they were out at the pool, and when I got there, I could see all around people were looking down at what was going on. And because he had run them off, all the people off. I'm not sure if he went over and said, "Get the hell out of here," or if he just was so drunk that they thought, "Let's get the hell out of here." So I show up and went over. Oh, then on the way over, I called. Back then I used the CB radio, and I mentioned about how I set that up, the antenna on my car, I had it polarized in a different manner, like normally you have a whip, up. But I got an antenna that was, it's the only one I'd ever seen, but it polarized differently, so it cut out a lot of the other radio signals, and from the, So anyway, I called the wife at that time, and I said, maybe you better notify KCPD. I got a feeling about this. And I drove over, went over, got out of the car, walked over, and I said, looks like you guys been, I forget exactly what, it was a long time ago. I said, but looks like you guys been drinking too much, and you're not supposed to be down here drinking at the pool, or, drinking at they weren't drinking, or whatever. And so the two guys, big guys, and one guy especially came over and got up in my face. I had my flashlight with me. I never ever hit anybody with that, in 30 years of hospital security. I never hit anybody with it. There was a few times when I thought I'm going to have to, but I never did. But this guy, I knew when he, started to do something, I was going to hit, not in the head. That would kill somebody. This is an aluminum flashlight, And at that time, I think it was loaded with D batteries. But I was going to break his clavicle, break his shoulder. You know, that'd be he wouldn't be using that arm anymore. And anyway, his buddy there with him, you know, didn't say anything like, oh, to his buddy, no, we don't want any trouble, you know, whatever. He was really kind of encouraging him, you know. He wasn't saying, stop, hey, come on, calm down, you know, whatever. So the guy's right up and he's yelling at me and whatever. I thought, okay. And I told him, you know, you need to go, you know, go to your room and whatever. And everybody was looking out, looking down. I could see the curtains, you know, and stuff. And then I said, you've been drinking? No, I haven't been drinking. I said, yes, you have been drinking. You need to go to your, you know, you need to go to your room, you know. And I forget, you know, you're going to make me or whatever? I said, if I have to, you know, I will. And anyway, the guy says, I'm not drunk. And then I heard a voice, you know, couldn't see anybody yet. Then he popped around a corner. It was a Kansas City, Missouri police officer. And he said, I can smell it all the way from here, you know. And then he starts walking that way. And then this guy's buddy grabs him. You know, he wasn't going to grab him to keep him from attacking me, but he didn't want any trouble with the police officer or whatever. So came over and the guys decided to go to there, and he got fired. Well, what happened was when they got the background check on this guy, he had all kinds of arrests and time in jail and everything else. He must have been sober then, and must have, you know, whoever was doing the hiring must have thought, oh, yeah, this guy seems like, you know, like an okay guy. Wait till you get the background checks. So, but I almost never call the police for, and I'd find doors unlocked all the time, especially, well, I don't want to give any of you ideas, but I must have had like 5 churches that I checked on. And, you know, the pastor has a key, and the assistant pastor and the choir master has a key, and whatever. And just about every night there'd be a door unlocked, you know. And I did a good job because the area that I signed people up in a small area. And like, well, I actually worked for that's how I got the idea for patrol service. I actually worked for a patrol service. It was located out in Orlando, Florida. No, Overland Park, Kansas. And they had me patrol in Overland Park. I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of people live. It's big. Not as big as Kansas City, Missouri, but big. And they signed me up for, you know, every car dealer except for one on Metcalf. Metcalf, the busy, you know, busy street there. And they had signed me up for every car dealer except for one. I mean, it could have taken me, and I checked them, you know, and I checked all the doors, not just, I didn't just drive through the place and look or whatever. And they had me signed up for, that was it. And they even, Olathe, 2 days a week. No, I guess it was, I was supposed to go out to a little town next to it for there was a little business of some kind, and then there was a eating place of some sort. Barbecue, I think it was. Or, no, I think it was pizza. Yeah, pizza place. And they had signed me up for, like, in Overland Park, like a nursing home or whatever. And I had to be there, like, when the employees were coming into work or going home at that time, and then I was supposed to come back at another time. You know, you could set your watch by me, which is not what it should be. It should be that nobody's going to know, but somebody, you know, okay, he's going to be here at, you know, 7 p.m. Okay, he's going to be here at 11, you know, p.m. or whatever. And it just, you know, and I did a good job in spite of the assholes that, well, the people who owned it, I think, they, I think the wife or something, they had the radio communication. I think they took care of that. Well, they probably hired somebody for night to sit there and do it, but they had a young guy that was in charge. He was the captain or something like that, and he was an asshole. And when they called me, when they hired me in, you know, as a guard someplace, and they put me at the Art Institute of Kansas City, Missouri. And Darlene, I didn't know her then, you know, because of the age difference, but she went to school there for a while. And, but anyway, I was hired in this company, put me, you know, sent me there to guard their art gallery, and it was like a couple of rooms. They didn't have much there. It wasn't like the Nelson Art Gallery with statues from, you know, around the world and paintings and best collections of Egyptian art or something, whatever they had there. But anyway, when I got called by Watchman Service to come out to their office, I went out to the office and they said, okay, well, we're going to have you patrolling this, which I thought, great. And that's what I, you know, of course I didn't know how it was going to be set up. And I didn't know, well, I knew right away when I got there because the guy that was like the captain or whatever, a young guy, I could just tell, asshole. And him and another security officer were there, and they were using the telephone, the office telephone. And what they were doing, they had a Radio Shack answering machine. You don't know what those are, do you? Back in the old days, they were calling. They had a Radio Shack, okay, answering machine. And so you have a remote control, and when you want to get your messages or whatever, you know, you press it and that kind of stuff. So you could get your messages remotely, you know, by just calling in. And so what they were doing was calling these other guard companies, pressing the button, and they were getting their messages from the Radio Shack. You know, now of course, or later, there were different codes, and I think you could set up a code at that time. So they were doing that, and then they were calling those people, you know, who might have called and said, I'm interested in your service or whatever, or who would call and say, this is so-and-so, and did your officer find such and such, you know, whatever. So they were getting the phone numbers. And then they were sending their salesman around, and the salesman, of course, they didn't care. I mean, he was going around, and as an example, you know, he was signing up all those people. I mean, at some point he should have stopped. You know, and also he shouldn't have been making, well, sure, he can be here at such and such a time. And anyway, so after a little bit of me patrolling, and I was doing a fantastic, in the back of these, this is before GPS and UPS, and, well, not UPS, but, you know, back in the ancient days. And a whole bunch of the patrol cars they had were nice. They were actually, I think, a kind of car that was used as cabs. I think in maybe London or whatever. I guess maybe someplace in the United States. They were used as cabs, so they were extra big and whatever. And nice. And what was nice too, and I'm not sure, they had, and through the roof, you know, they drilled a hole, and there was a spotlight, and so you could reach up, and you knew exactly where the light was when you wanted to shine it on a building or a door or a car or something like that. And I'm not sure, I don't think even then that police cars did that because of the damage to the, you know, vehicle, and you want to trade it in and that kind of stuff. But maybe some, you know, police departments did do that. I just didn't pay any attention. But that was great. Um, but oh, anyway, so the salesman was signing people up with no. He should have just told the company. Of course, then they'd have got somebody. They'd have fired him. You know, they just kept taking accounts when they shouldn't. And after I quit them, that's when I started my patrol service. But and I had no trouble signing people up. But I just signed up in a small area that I could actually take care of. I could sit at night with the window rolled down, and I could hear glass or something, or a car tire squeak, from blocks and blocks away, stuff like that. But anyway, the thing with the company there in Overland Park, this guy that was like the captain or whatever, he said, "Oh, okay, I need you tonight. Go and follow such and such a patrol company. Follow their car." And I said, "I have all these accounts to take care of. I can't, and no, I'm telling you what to do. You follow that car right down every place they go and shine their lights. We're going to call and get the business away from them." I thought, no. And so I didn't do it, So then the next day or whatever, he says, "Did you go?" And I said, "No, I was busy." "Well, no, I'm telling you, now go to, and follow this guy. You'll find him at such and such." He goes to the shopping center and pulls in there, and he eats there and whatever, and you can find him easily, and then follow him every place and go, And I said, "I'm really busy," something like that, And of course I didn't, And then the next day or whatever, he says, "I told you, and I want you to do it, and you're going to," and I said, "I tell you what, you can just take this job and shove it up your ass, you prick, whatever." And then he says, "Okay, well, turn in your commission." You had to have a commission from the Private Officers Commission, well, for Kansas City, Missouri, but then the other places, if you had that, they recognized that, you had to get one for each company. So you had to get one from them even though they weren't in Kansas City, Missouri. And I knew right away what he was going to do, that he was going to call, the sergeant there a guy that I knew. I mean, we didn't, go out and drink together or anything, but I knew him because I'd had actually a bunch of commissions, with him, through him. And I knew what this guy was going to do. And this guy said, "Okay, well, you need to turn your commission in." I said, "I'll turn it in down at the Private Officers Commission Unit." "No, you have to give it to me. That's the rules." And I said, "I don't think that is the rules." And he said, so he called, "This guy, I fired him." Well, he didn't fire me. I quit, but I didn't care. And he said, "And he won't turn in his commission." And I said, "I'd like to talk to him," so he could hear me. "I would like to talk to," whatever his name was, let's say Sergeant Brown. "I'd like to talk to Sergeant Brown." And he said, "Well, he wants to talk to you," so I had the phone. I said, "This guy's a fucking asshole." And I said, "I'll bring my commission down and turn it in to you in the next few days." I said, "I'm not giving it to him because he would throw it away or keep it maybe he could try to use it for somebody else and he'd swear to you that I didn't turn it in." And he said, "Okay, Jim, I understand." So that's what I did. This anyway, I set the patrol service up for myself and signed people up and everybody, because I actually did. With all my jobs, I always did. I didn't sleep on duty if I was a security officer, or a nurse or air traffic controller, I always did my job just the way I was, even when I wasn't paid, even when I was paid, 10 or 20 cents above the minimum wage. Now, the contract security places did, they did that. But when I worked 30 years hospital security, they paid us, more than minimum wage, It wasn't bad. But it got worse after years of hospital security, well, once you reach the top of you get the top of your pay scale, and you don't get any more. And especially, I reached the top of my pay scale fast because I knew my job and did my job. So then, every time I get a merit review once a year, I'm sorry, Jim, we can't, you're at the top of the pay scale. And then, too, what the hospitals did there later on was, till they told all the employees, except for the nurses, which I understand, and maybe some other people, maybe lab tech, I don't know, But anyway, okay, they continued to get, of course, they still had a top, but they continued to get. I noticed the way with hospitals that it worked out later on was a brand new RN hiring into the hospital. She hired in at a certain wage, and that was the top of, like, I was the top of my pay scale. That was my top of the pay scale, was the starting pay for RN or whatever. But the hospitals later on, by the way, which would be illegal. There's probably in every city, hospital association office someplace, and they naturally help the hospitals, I'm sure in different ways, whatever. But what they also do is they share information. How much does a starting security officer make? How much is the top of the pay scale? And they do that for RNs, LPNs, lab techs. They share all that information. That's price fixing. Not only do they share that, that information about pay, but they also, here they're competing with each other, but they share the information. How many openings do you have for LPN 1? How many openings do you have for plant operations people? And they share all that information. That should be, it is illegal, but, I've never heard of a hospital, Of course, they kept that information confidential, but at the first hospital that I worked at, the guy on the midnight shift, they didn't have supervisors there, but he worked the midnight shift, and he went into human resources. He started sounding like an animal, human, and he would look up information, and find it. And one time he showed me, the thing, the list of pay stuff, that kind of stuff. And then, let's see, the next hospital that I worked at, after I left St. Joe Hospital, the next hospital I worked at, the director of security, I didn't know then, I'd never heard of Trump, but now I know this director of security who was really smart, unlike Trump. Trump is about the most stupid person I've ever, unbelievably stupid, my God. But this guy was really director of security. He was really smart. But he had the same problems as Trump has. And I didn't realize that until I didn't know there was a name for it. And because of Trump, the information that came out about Trump, and there was, experts, even did books, about what's wrong with, Donald Trump. And then it was like, oh my God. Because I worked at that hospital 5.5 years, and I liked the director of security. He was racist. I still liked him. I mean, I didn't like that, and we had problems because I didn't put up with it, when I was a supervisor, and stuff, and there was other stuff that he did, but my God, he wrote me the most fantastic merit reviews, and they were accurate, but I thought, God, and I worked there 6 months. When I hired in, I had 3 years, 4 years of experience as a hospital security officer, plus some previous as contract, stuff like that, and I hired in, and the director of security hired me. And for 6 months, I was working the day shift. I knew what needed to be done, and I did it. and the other security officers, especially like the supervisor, and it wasn't like a supervisor that sits in an office, she should have been, and she did. A lot of times she did work, actually work, but really she went in to visit with her friends, it was like social time or whatever. But anyway, so I worked the day shift, so I was out doing, going out when it was snowing, to stand out at the entrance to a parking lot that somebody needed to be there for 2 hours or something as people were coming into that parking lot, or when it was blistering hot, Now when it was blistering hot, I was right there at the gate melting, when it was, this was up on a hill type of situation. Probably the worst area to be in Kansas City, if it's this winter storm or whatever. And then, but when I would be there out freezing, there was a Rehabilitation Institute. There was a connection. We weren't supposed to patrol it or respond there, but if they had a problem there, there was a tunnel between, and we had to go over, but right there, a few doors, or a few over there, I'd go and step inside the door and warm up, and then go back as best I could to the park. So anyway, I did. So I was 6 months merit review, and I hardly ever saw the director of security. I might see him driving in, park his car, go inside, and hear him on the radio occasionally. And I just did my job, and of course, I don't know, maybe he was going looking out the window and could see me, I don't know, but so anyway, I got called to go up to the office, and I thought, what was this about? So I went up there, and went in, he had a merit review for me, because after 6 months you got a merit review, and then after that was once a year. And so, and you could get to, well, I don't think anybody could get to 0. It was like 1 to 7, a rating of 1 to 7, because things were added together and that kind of, some math was done. And 7, if you got 7, you got a 7% pay increase. If you got nobody, and of course nobody was going to get a 1 or 2, maybe even, because if you got that, they'd just let you go or something. But I went there and I got 6.5%, and then I read what he wrote about me, and of course the difference between Trump and, of course I never heard of Trump, but the stuff he wrote, I was like, oh my God, this guy really thinks I'm a great person, an employee, which I was. But and I thought, wow. And then after that, I got 7% every time. But of course, real quick at 7%, I was at the top of the pay scale. But if I had known when I was trying to deal with this director of security, who I liked really in a way, but he also had these things, bragging about himself and how much money he made. And like we had a security officer, a real nice young security officer there that married a real nice nurse, an ER nurse there. He married her, and she was just a great person. She wasn't she was pretty and everything. She wasn't the prettiest one in the emergency room, but she was, nice looking, and the security officer married her, and the nurses in the emergency room were so happy because they liked him, the other security officer, and everything. But anyway, she died of cancer. Well, she had a baby, and then she died of cancer. But I think I got sidetracked. But anyway, the director of security at Trinity Lutheran Hospital, he lied about stuff, and if I had just known, because I was offered other jobs, especially I was offered the job at security officer at the Johnson County Community College, which that would have been neat. I'd been, the guy says, "You got the job if you want it, Jim." And he says, "Well, let me tell you the bad." This is the community college. Let me tell you the bad thing. I'll skip that. Skip. They told me. I said, "Thanks for telling me. I don't want to have to deal with that." What that was he said, we have a dean of students, we have a dean of faculty, we have a dean of, that's the way the system worked there. And he said, all the football field, baseball field, all these things they have and other stuff. You have to go and get, a permit if you're going to play ball there and that type of stuff. And these college students, community college, that was also the college that did the training for, police officers, required training for police officers. But he says, security will go and say, "Oh, do you have your permit?" "No, we don't have the permit." And "Okay, you can't play here. You need to get the permit." And so they would just call the dean of faculty, the dean of staff, whatever, and then say, till they're here, and get the security on, they can play there. I give them permission. And so this guy told me that, and I said, it shouldn't, but I would, after a short period of time, I'd be pretty pissed. And I said, and he said, "Okay, but anyway, at Trinity Lutheran Hospital, the guy that was a Trump clone, but they were different because this guy, the director of security, was really smart, but he made stupid mistakes that I couldn't understand how he could make any. And then too, he also lied about stuff, and of course that didn't come to me immediately, but then I saw, why would he? And of course I'm like to myself, why would he lie about something like that? And then just recently, after finding out about Trump and whatever, I realized, oh my God, like when I mentioned this just the other day for some reason, just when I was doing the checks that need to be made on fire extinguishers at the hospital, and went into plant operations. The guy in plant operations, we'd been told, this guy is, be careful. He is, I don't think they said insane, but this guy is dangerous. And the hospital doesn't know what to do with him. If they fire him, he may come back and shoot the place up or blow it up or, whatever. So just be really careful. So anyway, I went in there. I had to check the fire extinguishers, And he comes over and tells me I'm not allowed in there or whatever. And so, and I told him, of course, I was allowed any place in the hospital. And that I had to check those fire extinguishers and stuff. And so then when I came in the next day, I made up my mind that as soon as I saw the director of security, I was going to say, "Did you explain things to him?" As soon as I got to the hospital, in fact, the director didn't have to be in his office. I just ran into him on his second floor or whatever, and he says, "Jim, I talked to so-and-so, and I told him we can go any place in here, blah, blah, blah." So later on, like weeks or months later, one of the security officers, I ended up firing him, but not for this, but one of the security officers was a retired Kansas City, Missouri firefighter, and those people, when they were, firemen, they stayed at the station house for like 2 or 3 days straight. Then they got time off and that kind of stuff. And I think knowing a few of the firefighters and knowing police officers who knew firefighters and that kind of stuff, the firefighters just stirred up shit. That was the fun thing they did, deliberately. And if you were black, which was unusual to get hired in, but when they did, they'd probably hang nooses up and do stuff like that. And then the guy would get upset or something, and then they'd say, "Oh, Billy Bob," or it wouldn't be Billy Bob, that'd be a southern name, but, then they would like, "Oh, no, but they were racist, and that kind of stuff." And they would just do, and I don't know, nail somebody's shoes to the floor because they slept there. And I mean, just did all kinds of crap if you were, especially if you were anything, because they wanted to push the blame on somebody else. They wanted to stir shit up because, and this guy that got hired in as a security officer, retired, that's what he did. And that's where he got it. So, and he was racist, big time. And then when I was in a position where I was a supervisor or whatever, I explained to him and to everybody else on that shift, no, we're not having that. And I explained to each one individually, and then I explained to them as a shift, that it wasn't going to be. And he didn't get the message. Anyway, I couldn't. Well, the director of security was just as racist, but he let me do what I needed to do. But I couldn't understand why the director of security would. Oh man, if I had just known, hey, this is a problem. It's not just because he's having a bad day or whatever. If I knew, okay, what I knew, and some of this stuff, oh shit. If I had known it then, I would have quit, because I would have known, hey, this can't be changed, I thought, well, okay, I did a grievance against it. I did, I think 5 grievances, I think it was, and I won them all because he was wrong. And, the Human Resources Department, they backed me up, and of course he told the Human Resources Director, he was Director of Security, but the Human Resources Director was, the department head for human resources. And the human resources, guy would, I do the grievance, and first step was go to your boss, the director of security, and he told me he could do whatever he wanted to do, and if I didn't like it, I could get out of his department. And I said, this goes against hospital policy. You can't do it just because we're in a different kind of a uniform, and just because we are armed, and just because we have a badge, you can't, the hospital, human resources rules are the hospital rules for every employee. And he, and then so next step was to go to the Human Resources Director. I go to him, and he says, Jim, I told him, and two, what pissed, oh yeah, when, like one of the things was the Director of Security came into the security office. He had an office, and of course it was, he could go into our office too, of course it was 3 offices, for us. And, but he went in red, and he posted a thing on the thing that said, any security officer who misses 1 day's work, for any reason, will have to have a doctor's excuse. I said, Mr. Ross, I need to talk to you. I said, whatever. And he said, Jim, this doesn't apply to you, you never miss work, but so-and-so, he misses work. When it snows, he doesn't come in, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, Mr. Ross, listen, if there is a problem with this security officer, what you need to do is you call him in, and you explain to him, I've noticed, this, and it's a pattern. And so from now on, you're going to have a doctor's excuse if you miss a day. I said, you can do that, but you can't post a notice to all the security officers, anybody misses a day's work. I said, I can do whatever I want to do, and you can get, And of course he said, it doesn't apply to you because you never, he said that to me, So my next step is, when it, because, that didn't work with him, so the next step is go to Human Resources. I go down, and he says, the Human Resources was a really nice guy. He did a really good job. And I went down there, and he says, Jim, he says, he came down here, and he told me, what he had done. And I said, well, you can't do anything. And he said, he told me that you were, you were the #1 offender in the department on, whatever. And he said, I looked you up, and, I forget how he put it, and he used to be a railroad. He'd tell all new employees that were hired in when he was doing the orientation or whatever, he'd bring that up, the human resources guy. I was a railroad engineer, and I was thinking of the movie, the one with John Wayne or whatever, where that's what I think of, where the Southern Belle, the Southern lady there at the plantation that the Union soldiers had arrived at or whatever, and she asked or something. She asked, well, what was your job before you were, in the military or whatever? And he said, a railroad engineer. And then she says, oh, that must be so, blowing the horn of the train, that must be. And then no, I was an engineer, not, stuff like that. That's what I thought about. But anyway, the human resources guy said, I told him, no, he can't do that. And I said, fine, no problem. I go to the next step, I appealed it, went to the next step. And administration required him to, take his note down, and that he could not, enforce that and whatever. And so I got called to his office, and blood vessels were, I was afraid he was going to, throbbing on his head, and he was just so fucking mad at me, and he said, okay, and I did that to him several times, but I didn't know. If I had known, and two, though, a bunch of the times that I made him go crazy, I was actually kidding. I know I've gone over an hour, haven't I? This one time, he caught me in a hallway, and, oh, Jim. Well, first he caught me in the hallway, and or maybe he was at his office. Oh, Jim, I want to tell you, he says, I'm going before Congress to testify. Before, and I said, wow. And he said, yeah, I'm going before, I forget if he's at the House or the Senate. And he said, the guy there, who handles everybody who's going to testify, you have to give a written, what you're going to say in writing. And I thought, well, I'm never going to testify, that's for sure. I could go and testify about something, but I couldn't have written it down, Anyway, he says, this guy says this is the best, he has important people, everybody. And I had to write down everything I was going to, whatever. And he said it was the best, and I said, oh, yeah, that was, now I shouldn't have done that. He was telling me in front of the office with our security secretary and the lieutenant. And he says, and I shouldn't have done this, but I was kidding and joking or whatever. But I said, Mr. Ross, there isn't anybody that has to tell us, about you and how smart you are, and I forget what I said, blah, 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 And he said, then he turned to the lieutenant and the secretary and said, see, Jim knows, And then it was time for me to go home. So I was leaving, and they were laughing. The secretary and the lieutenant were just laughing their stuff silly. And the next day when I came into work, the lieutenant was in the office and the secretary was there. And I just walked up to the door and they just started, They didn't even say anything. They just started laughing so hard. But, so with that deal, so I don't know how long it was, a month later, 2 months later, whatever, and I was in the hall and Mr. Ross caught me. And he said, oh, Jim, I want you to see this. It was a government printing office, prints out testimony and that kind of stuff. And I said, Mr. Ross, I got stuff which was honest, I got stuff I really need to do. No, I want you to read this or whatever. And I said, how about I read it later when I'm not busy? No, read it now. I want to know what you think, So I read it. So it was 3 directors of security before the House or the Senate. One was director of security at a nuclear power plant, and One guy was director of security at, I forget what, something important. And then there was Mr. Ross, director of security at a hospital. And when I was reading this, I thought, oh God, I knew what happened, you know. So Congress is asking the director of security at, I forget what that was. It was something, you know, and then the director of security at, you know, the nuclear power plant. And of course I knew, because I got books from the government printing office all my life, when I was a kid, you know, and stuff. And I knew, you know, I'm not smart, but I had information, you know. And so I knew, you know, nuclear power plant located away from major cities, they have to be prepared to, you know, a terrorist attack. They have to be prepared, you know, there can't just be, you know, 2 or 3 security officers on the day shift and 2 or 3 in the evening and 2 at night or something, you know, and they had to have weapons. They had to be able to, they'd have to be able to stand an attack by terrorists or somebody who were armed with, you know, assault rifles and everything else. They'd have to be able to hold, you know, handle the situation. Of course, they have fences, barbed wire, cameras, all that, you know, all that kind of stuff. I knew all that. And so anyway, the guy with the, you know, and so then, and I knew Mr. Ross would be looking around, trying to get, there's a camera someplace, and, you know, trying to get in the picture, you know. I knew that's the way he would be. But then I'm reading it, and it says, now, Mr. Ross, you're director of security at for a hospital, and what type of training do your security officers get? And he said, well, the same as the, you know, the nuclear power plant, you know, whatever. And I don't know if they, I thought, oh shit, you know. So then I read it, and I said, real good, Mr. Ross. He said, so you liked it? I said, oh, I know, I couldn't help myself, you know. And I was kidding, you know. I said, well, other than you committed perjury before a congressional committee, I said, I think Senator Stuart Stymings of Missouri is probably not going to be, what? And I said, yeah. You know, we don't get training in, you know, using assault rifles and, you know, that type of stuff. And I said, so you were lying before Congress. And he went ballistic. If you know, you can just get out of that apartment. I don't need you in this apartment. Get out of here, you son of a bitch, and blah, blah. I can do whatever. And so and then once he did that, when he did those kind of things, I didn't say, Mr. Ross, I was just kidding. You know, I didn't do it. In fact, I would say something like to add, you know, to make it, which was stupid on my part. A fault. There, hey, you have a fault. You know, if you think I don't have faults, I do. My comedy routine that I do sometimes is not good when you're doing it in a situation like that or something. So that went to, down to, you know, the grievance procedures. And I won. But, you know, I never, and that's, yeah, that was a failing of mine. My only failing. I'm kidding, you know. I have more than one. I have 2. Anyway, I guess it's time to say bye-bye. Wake up, wake up. You fell asleep. Thanks very much for watching.